Okay, we're now live. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Robert Levy, and I guess I'm the chairman of the policy committee. Let me call the meeting to order. Although I did not see it on our proposed agenda, why don't we start with the pledge, which I think is kind of appropriate. Ed, you want to lead us? Ed, can you hear me?
Sure will. Yes, sir. Oh, you got me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
the United States of America.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ed. And let's have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. And appreciate everyone being here, especially Ms. Alpenfels, who is our head of HR, and Mr. Eklund, who is doing the IT. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate Ms. Carter and Mr. Dennison being here. And I want to appreciate Ms. Carter because for some reason, some crazy reason, you appointed me as chairman of this committee.
Don't make me second guess that.
Yeah, well, you can always after the meeting, you can always fire me. It's okay. It's all right.
It's a pretty thankless job. I might have trouble getting somebody else to do it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. We have an agenda, a proposed agenda. Is there a motion to adopt that agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
let's try second, Mr. Dennison. Second by Ms. Carter. Motion by Mr. Dennison. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 3-0. Okay, so we're now unified. Okay, so my understanding, since this is a committee, this is not a formal type of thing. We have some proposed policy changes, which Ms. Alpenfels has given us. And I would guess the best way to deal with it is, and you guys tell me, because I want to deal with this kind of informally, since this is a committee, we'll just go through it change by change and see if anybody has any comment on any particular change. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
And Mr. Lee, if it would be helpful to you, I'm happy to sort of walk through. Do you think that would be helpful?
Well, let me try to do it this way because we all have a copy of this. Okay. So first of all, there are changes to the titles to all this. Does anybody have any objection to the change of the titles?
I believe most of these
or
made by, I'm guessing Dr. Alpenfels can weigh in.
Okay,
on
there's
it,
a lot
the
of
majority of the
feedback.
changes.
I've got a lot of feedback here. Okay, first of all, Ms. Carter, go ahead.
Most of the changes I think come in, and Dr. Alpenfels can add to this as recommendations from the North Carolina School Board Association. So things like changes in titles, in the scheme of things, are a very minor part of it. But she could explain why those suggestions have been made, I believe.
Well, that's not all I really want to know is, so we can kind of move on to the meat, is there anybody who has a problem with any of the title changes? That's what I really want to know. And I didn't think so. So why don't we go down to past that to the first, to the first change, which is any report received. Do you see, everybody following me? Anybody have any problem with that? Any record? Because I'm going to assume that most of these things, Ms. Alpenfels, are just things from the School Boards Association, and I'm not going to worry about it, but I just want to check to see whether anybody has any problems with any of it. So I assume nobody has any problems with that.
And if I could explain where it's coming from.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Carter and Mr. Dennison are probably familiar with the term pension spiking. The state of North Carolina became concerned 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, because what was happening is there were some highly paid state employees, if you will, who near the end of their tenure as state employees were getting significant salary increases. And because someone's retirement is based on your highest 4 years, it was perceived as negatively impacting the state's pension system. And so now there are requirements about notifying the county commissioners about any potential pension spiking, because what's happening is school districts, community colleges, and other government entities are being sent a bill from the retirement system if it is determined that pension spiking has occurred, or if folks have not paid into the system sufficiently so as not to overtax the system. All this language is saying is any of those data are confidential because it deals with someone's earnings. And so that's what prompted this addition from the School Boards Association.
My only concern about that, actually, I didn't have any problem with it until you mentioned that. If pension spiking is a problem and this makes pension reports confidential, doesn't that make pension spiking more likely? Or am I not following this correctly?
It's just really about someone's confidential personal information, and it is not a public record.
No, I understand it. It's just, I mean, I kind of agree that except for probably the superintendent, no one's pension should be public record. An individual teacher's pension shouldn't be public record. But I was just wondering with your explanation, that makes it more difficult to detect this pension spiking. But I assume you're the one who detects the pension spiking. So in other words,
actually,
that's your responsibility. So whether it's public or not, it shouldn't matter. Am I right?
The state notifies our finance officer about any potential if someone were to retire at a given time. So he receives a monthly report. But again, this is simply to clarify that those reports are not public records.
Okay, I mean, it's fine with me. Go ahead.
We know about all those, Bob. As a matter of fact, we give the commissioners are given a report on pension spiking. I think it's monthly, or any potential. And we'll see the reports and really what's involved in all of them.
Okay, I just didn't want to make it easier to do that, but I would guess that this does not. So I'm not going to worry about it. Does any of you guys have any other things? Okay, let's move on. Keep moving here.
I have no problem.
Keep moving here to the next thing. This next one is simply, seems to me to be just a citation, which doesn't seem to me to be a problem. And then this is another citation, and there's the word standards will guide the board instead of consideration. Standards. I don't know why that is. I mean, it doesn't seem to me to be a problem, but does anybody have anything about that?
Bob, would you refer to the page numbers that you're reading?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Can...
I'm literally going directly down. Let me see where my page numbers are.
Page 7, excuse me.
Is this
Actually,
policy 1419.
Yes, we're on page 7.
Okay.
Okay, let me try and do it. I'll do it that way. Maybe that'll be easier again. 1419A. Change the word considerations to standards. Do you see that, Ed?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know. Doesn't seem to me to be a problem. I don't know what the reasoning is behind it, but I mean, why? Ms. Affenfeld?
Well, again, Mr. Levy, in the table of contents, the revisions to both 1419 and 1420 are to align them with the School Boards Association samples. When our attorney and I looked at these, there was not a good reason not to align with the School Boards Association sample, and it can facilitate the updating of our policies. By the way, I'm just now seeing a typo, and by the way, there's nobody to blame for a typo but me on the bottom of page 7.
I saw it.
And I'll fix. I know.
Yeah, I know about that, but
I'll
you know,
fix that.
I'm not gonna worry. Wasn't going to worry about it, quite frankly.
I'll take care of that. So.
Okay, so any problem with the word standards? And I know this is really technical. Just right above that, I assume the 6 is also stricken, or is it? GS 160A dash.
Actually, the 83 is stricken, and it is
Okay.
replaced with 86.
All right, just so long as that's intentional.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter to me. So anybody have any problem with that?
No.
Okay,
I
so
don't.
moving right along.
Might be disconnected. I'm trying to reconnect.
Oh, do you have a
Yeah.
problem?
I'm back. Yeah, that's fine with me.
Oh, okay. All right. And then going down to B, B2 shall endeavor to make policy decisions while always keeping in mind the objective of providing students the opportunity to receive a sound basic education, and only after. I mean, I don't see a problem there. Does anybody? I mean, for many reasons, I'm trying to understand why that's there, but it just seems to me to be logical. And going down to each board member shall, and then model civility to students and all elements of the community by encouraging the free expression of opinions and engaging in dialogue with fellow board members, respectful dialogue. I mean, I don't have any objection to it. Why is that there, though? I want to make sure that someone didn't put that as kind of a backhanded criticism to one of our board members. That was
Well,
what concerned me.
I think the reason, as Anita stated, all of these are just to align it with the State School Board Association's policies.
And these revisions, Mr. Levy, are sent out to any school district that subscribes to the North Carolina School Boards Association's policy process. So it is not targeted at Moore County schools at all.
Okay, so this particular change was from the School Boards Association
Yes,
and
sir.
was not from any particular person in Moore County. Am I correct?
Correct, sir. That's why.
All right, that's what I agree with it, but I know there's been some contention, and I don't want to be perceived as trying to criticize anybody's conduct, because I'm a believer in free speech.
Yeah.
I'm also a believer in being respectful.
I would guess Bob and Anita can weigh in on this too. We didn't do policy at all in December, and I don't think the policy committee met in November. So this is kind of a backlog of things that have come up. I don't know what the actual date was that you began to get the information from the association, but these are things that have been sitting waiting for the next policy committee.
Ms.
Okay,
Carter,
well, that's fine. I think you guys understand what my misgivings were, and that belays that.
It's funny that it came up, yes, considering what we've had in recent situations. I do think that actually the way it's worded is better for our needs now anyway, because before it just simply said what Each member of the board commits to the free expression of opinion by all board members. And now we've extended that a little bit more such that we will engage in respectful dialogue, which I think I
think it's always a good idea. So I can say, I think you're a bum respectfully.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just joking. Joking. Okay. If anybody wants to try to quote me directly, I'm just, okay. Respect the confidentiality of information that is privileged under any applicable law, and refrain from unauthorized disclosure of in closed session. I have a problem with the term unauthorized. In other words, I think I had suggested something else, which was refrain from confidential disclosure. Is that what I put? Confidential disclosure. Because in other words, whether it is, I could understand the board saying, well, we're just not going to authorize you to say this, and it's not confidential, but it's in, it's in closed session. So I don't want, I want it to be that it shouldn't be confidential, but I don't want the board to be able to muzzle anybody from the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Bob, I don't think that's what it means. I mean, it might be something like if law enforcement were involved in something that happened in the district that we had covered in confidentiality in closed session, we might authorize them to use the information. Would that be correct, Anita? Something like that?
Well, the reason that unauthorized is in there is there's a very limited slice of the law that would permit disclosure of information contained in closed session. The one that comes to mind, and I apologize that I don't have the statute in my head, but I can certainly get that to you if you need it. For instance, if we had and we've never had this, we've never exercised it because it is legally precarious. But if we had a situation where an employee maybe was reprimanded and then went out and said all sorts of mistruths about the board, and that risked undermining the work of the board could elect to reveal previously confidential information. Again, that is a very rarely accessed law in North Carolina because it is legally very precarious. What I might recommend in response to your concern, Mr. Levy, is if we were to say unauthorized disclosure of confidential and or privileged matters discussed in closed session.
I like that. That actually works.
Okay.
So, in other words, so if it's arguable that if it's not privileged, it doesn't need to be authorized. Okay, I mean that's fine. As a matter of fact, I like that.
That works.
Does that work for you, Mr. Dennison? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, so why don't we change that to do exactly? And I understand Ms. Alpenfels is taking notes on this, on the changes. Although she told me she is not able to say Mr. Levy said this, Mr. Dennison said that, and I quite understand that. So that's very good. So let's go ahead. The next are simply number changes, which I assume no one has any problem with. Next is on 11, the new number 11. Support the employment of persons best qualified to serve as school employees, and instead of insist upon a regular and impartial evaluation of all employees, avoid allowing personal relationships to influence decision making. I like that. I've got no problem with that. Does anybody? Okay. And next is 12, refrain from investigating or attempting to resolve complaints received personally, but instead direct the complaint to follow the board's grievance process to resolve concerns. Let me ask you about that. I agree that it's not our. As a matter of fact, I just last night I got an email from someone who had a complaint about a particular person. Okay, and I directed that complaint to their principal. Told them to contact their principal, and if that didn't help, to then contact the superintendent. Okay, but if that didn't help, to contact me back, because in other words, if it can't be done with the superintendent and it can't be done with the principal, I don't want to simply close off people to the bureaucracy. Does that make sense? So I kind of agree that we should refrain from attempting to resolve such things and to follow the board's complaint or grievance process. But something about that we should feel free to aid in that process. You understand what I'm saying?
I read what you suggested, that nothing should discourage a board member from assisting a member of the public in the resolution of matters. Actually, I think if we would take part of what you've written and added on there, and Anita, you'll have to clarify whether or not this would be permissible, but if we took, and I'm guessing you saw Mr. Levy's notes.
Yes, and I've already reviewed those with counsel, who has issued a response to some concerns about Mr. Levy's language. So
I was thinking we could select part of it, and at the end of what's written on here, go with, however, nothing herein should discourage a board member from bringing to the attention of the superintendent or the appropriate designee, I think I would say, for problems which constituents encounter. And I think, because that's actually what we do. If there is a situation that someone contacts you and you want to refer it on to the right person. I don't know if that wording is needed, but that's what we typically do. The reason I would leave out that from assisting a member of the public in the resolution is that the more we get individually involved in assisting people, the more likely you will have to recuse yourself if it comes into a matter of appeal.
No, and I understand that, and I agree with that, but I don't want to. But I basically I like your language, Ms. Carter.
That was your language, but
no. You added some things.
Actually, I went back to your notes where
however, nothing in this resolution should discourage a board member from assisting a member of the public in resolution of matters or bringing.
Okay, so I just cut out your middle portion. That from assisting a member of the public in the resolution of the matters, and I went straight from should discourage a board member from bringing to the attention of the superintendent or his designate problems which constituents encounter.
Or the board.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, yeah.
Okay, that's what I would have no problem with that if we could insert that.
Yep.
How do you feel?
Bob, this is what we have to be careful for is giving advice to say a parent or someone who contacts us about a specific thing. And I'm very careful about that, because if it's an administrative thing, it may not be what we thought it was. So then that person would go to whoever and say, well, a board member told me this. but that's not really what we're doing. That's why we have to really be careful there and refer them to administration who could give the correct answer.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But to bring it to the superintendent or the board, because that's where it should. If there is a problem, that's where it should be resolved. Where it should be brought.
Right. There are appeals and other methods that people can bring things to the board, and that's one of the reasons we don't get involved, because we'll be acting in a judicial sense there, and we'll have to make a decision by listening to both sides of the story.
No, I understand. I understand that. But one of the problems that people have is they don't know simply to literally just call the superintendent, literally go to your principal and make sure that it's in whatever you do is in writing. That's the kind of help that they come to us for, because we're elected, and we're elected to help them, not to resolve a particular, we're policy. You know, that's our job. It's not to help a particular person, but if there's an employee who is engaging in something, you know, we have to bring it to the attention of the superintendent. And if the superintendent doesn't resolve it, we have to bring it to the attention of the board. And that's what we do. I can't resolve it. You know, you can't resolve it. No, you know, we can't. So that's the reason why I liked Ms. Carter's. If we just get rid of that middle stuff and say, however, nothing shall discourage a member from assisting, a board member from assisting a member of the public to bring to the attention matters to the attention of the superintendent or the board problems which constituents encounter.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I don't know, Nita, what Neil's comments were, but if we bring up anything in recommending anything that he feels we shouldn't do, please let us know. Yeah,
please let me know that too.
So if I may, I actually have feedback from I work with Jason Weber on policies, and if it's okay, I can share with you what he said about this additional language.
Okay.
He did not recommend the addition for this reason. The purpose of the original policy language is to ensure a fair and unbiased review or hearing of any matter that comes to the board on appeal when exercising its judicial functions. Board member involvement in assisting or resolving problems prior to the board hearing stage opens the board up to claims for violation of due process. Board members need to be impartial. If the concern is related to reporting complaints, the original language in the policy includes a commitment to direct complainants to follow board complaint and grievance processes. Further, Policy 1020, Duties and Responsibilities of a Board Member, commits members to report complaints and concerns to the superintendent for appropriate investigation and response.
So nothing is in this discourages us from bringing the matter to the attention of the superintendent or the board. Seems consistent.
I think we have in there other places where it really says that we're to let the superintendent know.
Well, but here's what it's all about. I'm not the kind of a person, I don't intend to be the kind of a board member who simply says, you know, someone comes to me with a problem, and they do, read the manual. You know, I'm going to direct them to the superintendent. I'm going to direct them to their principal. I'm going to one person was upset at the board at the something was going on the bus. I directed them to the head of our transportation group. You know, didn't talk to the transportation group head because that's not my job. That's you know, he doesn't know me from Adam, and but I did mention it to the superintendent. You know, so that's what we do, and I don't want to discourage that.
Yeah, generally when we notify, if we notify a specific administrator, we generally copy the superintendent too, so they know that we have talked to them, so he knows what's going on, even though he may not get involved. It's just, you know, it's for his information that you sent that message to whoever it
Right.
was.
Right. Which is what I did. But I like the language and would like to put it in. I don't know.
Bob, let me restate, because I don't think that this particular edition would harm what we're saying. If we go with what is actually printed there under number 12, and we, following the semicolon state, however, nothing herein should discourage a board member from bringing to the attention of the superintendent or his designate problems which constituents encounter. I think we need to leave the board out of that, because that's where we get into the area of dirtying up the board before we could get into an appeals process if need be. But the superintendent's designate most times is the principal, or then it's going to be one of the senior staff right over them. So that's simply following procedure, just like you stated.
Okay, I'll go along with that. Go along with that.
Dr. Appenfeld, does that sound good?
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So let's keep on moving here. Okay, that's just a numbering thing. We're on to number 14. As stated, board, it's the conflict of interest. Board refrain from participating in, distributing in, voting, or attempting to influence any person with respect to any matter pertaining to employment of the board. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
I think we're good with it.
Well, I'm good with it.
Like the reference to romantic partner. I don't know if I've seen that used before, but
We're trying to make sure that we are including appropriate language, and I will tell you that it is that has been important in my world before, because it might not have been a marriage partner, but it was a romantic partner. And by the way, it was not about the board. It was about another situation. So that can be important to have in there.
Oh, I agree. And as a matter of fact, I think, and I'm not going to say particularly which school or whatever, but I think that has come to our attention before, that we've had problems with significant other relationships, So I think it's important. Yeah.
yeah, I think we can go with the way it is. I don't believe there's any other things we can add to it.
So does anybody have any real problem with that change? Ed, anything? No? Okay, so let's move on. 1213. There's a change in a legal designation there. Moving on to the next page, we're at 1420. I was talking about 1419.
Correct, but you're going to see some of the same language in 1420, Mr. Levy.
Okay, my question was, why is the hiring? Okay, I asked, why is the hiring procedure being repealed?
And that's actually on page 13.
Okay.
So I'm assuming then everybody's good with 1420, so we can move on.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's no change. 1420 that's just romantic partner, grandchild. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Anita, on page 11, in the highlighted red part where it says pertaining to the board member's spouse.
Oh, yeah, I see the space that you're pointing out. Eagle eye, thank you. I see it. Got it.
So there's really nothing on.
No.
That
I'm just going through that page and then going down to the next page. There is a blank, which I guess was a citation, which was changed.
Well, the blank that's at the end of these policies, Mr. Levy, is a placeholder so that when the board approves these changes, I go back and add the date that they're changed. So that's why you'll see a blank line at the end of each of these.
Yeah. Okay. So 3022. Okay. Tell me, Ms. Alpenfels, why is this hiring procedure being repealed?
As I noted in the table of contents, both 3021 and 4021 and 3022 really aren't needed because their contents are contained in another policy. And as I find this duplication, I try to clean it up. So,
Okay, so this is just a duplication.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, that's cool. Anybody else have any problem there?
No,
Okay,
sir.
let me go down. Oh, there was in 3022. I thought that the term parent it's actually throughout, and maybe this is something that should be cleaned up later. I hate to say it, but in today's world, it's almost antiquated when not used synonymously with the term guardian or the adult who is either legally or de facto responsible for the care of a student.
And Mr. Levy, I certainly understand that, and we can do that. If I were to go through and make that adjustment, we'll have to put all of these policies before the board. Now, what may be appropriate to do in this case is, as we find them, what we could do is change parent and add parent, legal guardian, or legal custodian, if that would be beneficial. We really don't do definitions sections in most policies. So would that be okay if I were to just to change that? Yeah, parent, we are generally treated as, we understand that parent is an all-inclusive term that also implies guardianship, because legally a guardian does parent a child.
No, I understand it, but and there are many of our students also who are not living with a parent and who may be living with a sister or things like that. So we're dealing with the real world. But if you could do that and say, or person legally responsible.
And I'm assuming you're not referencing 3022. I'm assuming that you were referencing 3036. Is that?
Yeah, I'm probably correct.
Okay. I'll take care of that.
Okay, so moving right along.
Yep.
Electronic video conferencing or Zoom. Did I have a problem? I didn't have a problem there. Did anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving right along where it's down to C. And tell me, Ms. Appenfels, if I'm missing, because I'm using my phone to go through this, so I don't want to miss anything.
Right.
3051/4051. I didn't have a problem there, I guess.
What you had sent me, Mr. Levy, was that you wanted to amend. This would be in the first paragraph. The last sentence there. The board encourages employees to report possible financial improprieties, ethical violations, and other. Oh, wait a minute. I'm on the wrong.
No. I didn't think we're at 304. Let me say which page we're on. So
yeah.
let me make sure the correct page of your hymnal is 18.
By the way, it's a hymn number, not a page number in a hymnal. Just so you know.
Okay. Well, I am uniquely unqualified to talk about that.
That's the music educator coming out. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, so
3051. We're okay with that one?
yeah, it seems to me let me keep on going down. in my notes, I don't have a problem with anything up to 5540. So
Now, I believe that you had a question on policy 3060, the discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law. On page, you had a comment about the addition on page 27. Am I correct about that, Mr. Levy?
okay, let me get to page 27 first.
Okay.
Okay, let me roll through here. Because
Yeah,
this
he
was
had suggested to modify the proposed amendment. But I can't tell exactly where that proposal goes in. You had suggested who makes a good faith report of discrimination, harassment, violation of law, regulation, or board policy.
It's at the top of 27.
Okay.
Maybe the reason that we would not want to expand this language is this policy is only about discrimination, harassment, not other violations of the law.
Right.
And what the school board kind of went through back really last fall, we had some significant adjustments to our board policies in light of the new Title IX regulations issued by the federal government. So this policy is specific to discrimination and harassment, not anything else.
Well, okay, my problem goes something like this. If someone discovers something which is a violation of board policy, let's say the one where you're not supposed to text to students without their parents' permission. And I use that because when I was a substitute teacher, Ms. Alpenfels, I remember you giving a lecture actually on that.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I thought it was great. I thought it was I still think it's a fantastic policy.
I'm glad you remembered. That's good.
Yeah, it made an impression on me. If someone discovers that, I don't want that person to be subject to retaliation.
And we have a separate retaliation policy.
Right.
So that's covered.
Okay, all right. I'll take your word on that because I'm very, very, very concerned that I want people. I have heard, and when I say I have heard, this is only anecdotal and it's actually secondhand. And I don't put any credence in someone who tells me, I heard someone say to me, because the lawyer in me tells me that's hearsay and that's inadmissible. Okay. But they're telling me that some people are scared of harassment, not harassment, of retaliation if they say X or Y. And I want to make sure that all of our people are open so they can bring any problems to our superintendent or to the board for that matter without fear of retaliation. And I think you all would probably agree with that. Am I right?
Oh yeah, and it's that's what our policy is.
Okay, all right. So I'll leave that to other areas. But anyone who is listening in on this call, because this is a public thing, they should know that our policy is that if something's going wrong, we want to know about it. We want the superintendent to know about it. And if you're scared to bring it to the attention of the superintendent, the chair wants to know about it. And Mr. Dennison, myself, and every other member of the board wants to know about it. Okay.
May I ask a question? And this is going to really be to Ms. Alpenfels. Through this and through, I believe it's the next one, we refer to the complaining individual. And
Yeah.
why are we not saying the reporting individual? There's something negative about the complaining individual, or could it not have been the complainant?
It's actually required by the new Title IX regulations that we call the person the complainant and the respondent. We don't refer to the person as an alleged victim, and we don't refer to the person who's being accused as a perpetrator. We are to call them complainant and respondent.
Right, well, we're using the term complaining individual, which something about that, I noted it on page 30, and it
Okay.
seems to me I just saw it in here as well. There's something very negative about calling someone a complaining individual as opposed to calling them a complainant, and that's simply connotation.
All right, hang on. Where do you see that, Ms. Carter? I'm trying to find it.
I know it's on page 30, but we aren't down to page 30 yet. Let's see. Oh, like at the top of 27.
Okay, hang on.
And it's not, and it's just before the red part. It says no reprisals will be taken by the board against a complaining party or other individual. There's a couple other places where we say the complaining individual.
All right, I'll check about that because I want us to be careful, because if it hasn't been formalized, then they are not a complainant. It's just kind of interesting that the feds have put such credence on these two words, complainant and respondent. I'll check on that.
Well, and I'll add my 2 cents in. I think Ms. Carter has a good point. And the less we can stigmatize, even if it's a small connotation, the less we can stigmatize a person who is making a report. I won't say a complaint, a report. The better off we are, you know. So we want to encourage reports.
Yeah, I like the term complainant, and if that's what the federal government says we can use, then that would make sense. But there's just a few places in there where it comes up, and I just thought it interesting.
What I'll do is I'll find out, and I'm wondering if the reporting party might even be amenable and maybe less stigmatizing. If our attorney says that's okay, I'll run that by him. And
that was what I had typed out as a suggestion, was the reporting individual, reporting party.
And I would agree. I would agree with that.
As we know, if it's a report coming from a child, often it's a group that will make the report, because 1 or 2, 3 children will get together and decide that they can speak up with strength in numbers. So reporting party or the complainant party, whatever.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, so let's keep on moving here. Moving right along.
Okay, so we're down to 5540.
I'm going to just going through here. I think we're going to get down to 5540. Is it 5440 or fight? Okay. Just a civics joke, just to keep things going. Yeah. 5540. So I can try to bring in some controversy here. How do people feel about my suggestion on 5540?
So I think you had more than one. Oh, okay. So you're talking about, are you talking about the voter registration requirement, Mr.
Yeah, yes.
All right. So according to our attorney, we cannot require registration as a course requirement or a graded assignment. And along the same lines, we cannot require it as a condition of graduation. 115C-47 subset 59, to encourage student voter registration. Local boards of education are encouraged to adopt policies to promote student voter registration. And we have one, by the way. These policies may include collaboration with county boards of elections to conduct voter registration in high schools. Completion and submission of voter registration forms shall not be a course requirement or graded assignment for students.
Okay, well, that is one of the reasons why I've said, or a statement saying I've decided not to register to vote at this time. I mean, so you don't have to do it. You just have to say I've decided not to register.
And
that semi opens a student up to ridicule by other students or taunting, like he doesn't care, he's not going to vote.
Well, it may be, and there may be also good reason, and that doesn't have to be made public.
The only other consideration with
You know?
this is that it also, first of all, it's more paperwork for our counselors to keep up with as they head toward graduation. But we have children who aren't even eligible to vote when they graduate. They simply haven't hit the age limitations. And again, that would be a "I'm not eligible to vote" kind of response. It also semi-targets students who might not be legal citizens and ineligible.
But that's the reason why it says a statement saying I've decided not to register to vote at this time, and no student need reveal the reason for a decision as to whether the student is eligible or whether for any reason ineligible to vote.
Well, Bob, wouldn't that be like asking a student to say they are not an illegal alien or immigrant or something like that? I think
No.
Really
They may just
very ticklish area when you get into this.
They may simply decide. They may simply decide. They may simply decide to say, "I just decided not to register to vote." Could be absolutely eligible. Decide not to do it. I'll put it to you this way. I truly believe in this. I'm not going to go to the mat on it. Okay. But I believe this or something like it should be part of our policy. But as the Marine said, it's not a hill I'm ready to die on yet, because a lot of my more conservative friends might say, well, we don't want young people to register because they might vote liberally. But I believe that that getting involved in high school is actually much better, and being with their parents is much better than getting involved for the first time when you're away at Carolina or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bob. But at Pinecrest, like, don't we have a Young Republicans Club there that's in a group? That's perfectly fine. But putting something like that in policy to me,
they're called TARS, Teenage Republicans, and I hope, and I sincerely hope the Democrats have a group like that too.
Besides that, though, and go back to the registration, I know that because you mentioned in your notes possibly having registration cards available at the front office to be able to hand them out. I know there is a very concerted effort every election year to get folks registered before they graduate, and the same groups go to the community college to attempt to register, because I know Republican Women did it. I know the League of Women Voters has done it. There's a lot of effort put into it already. I'm just not sure that we need to tie it to graduation requirements.
Okay, I'm gonna drop it, but I don't want to belabor it. It's obviously the sense of the committee not to put this in, and actually I understand why. But I think I've done my best by highlighting that, and maybe I can telegraph to our superintendent and to our principals that I think it's important for them to encourage every graduate of our high schools to be able to vote, assuming they're 18. But I would also remind people listening in on this call, you can pre-register at, I believe, the age of 16. So that when you become 18, you automatically become registered.
And Mr. Levy, that's why the board has policy 6842 that addresses student voter registration and pre-registration. There's a board policy in that regard.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just drop it. I won't belabor it, and I won't ask that it be put into our proposal.
Anita, what's that policy number again? I just want to look it over.
6842.
6842. Okay.
And I'll look at that too. But let's keep on moving. Just one second. And my next comment was on 5540A.
Page number?
33.
33.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 5540, I said A. Unless approved by. This is something that maybe needs to be taken a look at in the curriculum situation. But it seems to me that this 5540 says that everyone is going to be college bound unless you get specific permission to do a CTE graduation. Am I wrong here, Ms. Alpenfels?
Well,
Yeah,
I think you're. Sometimes the title of these things can be misleading. The occupational course of study is for exceptional children. That is not a CTE anything. It is for students who really are not able to meet the regular graduation requirements. So that language is there.
All right, so perhaps that was a misunderstanding of me, by me. So in other words, no one has to be approved for a CTE as opposed to a college ready degree. Am I correct?
Right. The occupational course of study is not CTE. It is for exceptional children.
Okay. All right. And I'll stand.
Basically, the largest number of children are in the Future Ready core course of study, and we have a very small number who are actually in the occupational course of study. So, and if you look at the requirements for the two, you'll see the difference in what is required for them.
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
so you're telling me that this is just mostly for exceptional children, correct?
That's the occupational study. Mhm.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so a person who wants to do, let's say, become a cosmetologist, and who is perfectly able to go into the college ready course of study, but decides they still just want to be a cosmetologist. Do they have to? They need specific approval?
They have the same options for graduation requirement. There's only a differential for exceptional children under the occupational course of study.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. And what by exceptional children? Because we're talking about kids with IEPs and things like that, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And it's
All right.
not just IEPs, because there are a lot of children who have IEPs who will.
Oh, yes. I don't mean to stigmatize.
That's
I don't
right.
mean to stigmatize any child with an IEP, because we have a lot of children who are brilliant and who have IEPs.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
But we're talking about exceptional children. And I get that.
When you see the requirements below, and then you have lunch at Chick-fil-A one day, you'll meet some of our occupational course of study students who are in there performing community service or getting paid for working at Chick-fil-A or at Food Land, or in other positions that the school arranges and supervises for them. So they're learning to be self-sufficient based upon their actual abilities. And so
No, I understand that. And let me tell you, Ms. Carter, I've actually substituted in a class of exceptional children, and we went to work at, I believe it was Food Lion, and they were bagging groceries and the like. And by the way, we're quite good at it, and we're valued by the. It may not have been Food Lion; it may have been Harris Teeter or one of the grocery stores. They were very valued, and the manager was very appreciative of our program.
right. So when you look at that occupational course of study, you'll see that as one of the requirements for their course, which is not with the students who are in just the core Future Ready. And these are strange names. I'm assuming those are state names for the course of study. That Future Ready core courses. A good portion of those young people will not go to college and have no intention to, because, as you said, they become a cosmetologist, or they're ready to go to work with their dad as masons, or electricians or whatever it might be. And of course, now with our programs linked with Sandhills, a good number of our children are coming out with that Future Ready core course of study and certification to go right to work.
Yes.
So the term, just not to belabor this, the term Future Ready deals with both CTE students and college ready students.
That's correct.
And
Okay.
and occupational course of study students.
Okay, all right. So I appreciate that. Let's moving right along here so as not to belabor it. Let me see where my next note is on all this.
I think the next note is on page 42.
Yeah, but I want to go through what page are we on now?
Well, we were
on page 33.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me keep on going. Does
I had a
anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Carter.
question, and this, so many of these pages are simply the stricken pages.
Yes.
When you get down to 40, page 40,
Yes.
and it's a question about the social studies as it's listed. Let me see.
Page, you're saying page 40,
Page 40.
36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. Okay, I'm on page 40 now.
Oh, well, it's not a question. It's a typo.
Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad.
Where it's got the 2 in parentheses under social study, it says an American history courses, which so either Ann's got to go or
I got it.
got to go.
Thank you so much.
I know that's very minor, but
No, but I want it to be right, and I just so appreciate it. You do your very best to proof, and I didn't catch that one. So, and I read.
No, we have a problem here. We've elected an English teacher as our chair.
no. Anita's used to me.
So
Well,
that's a compliment.
I retype everything that goes in here that's new because I want to know what it says, and that comes with a liability of something like that. So I apologize. Thank you.
And Bob, my real problem is the fact that I worked as a newspaper proofreader when I was in college, and that's what tunes you into looking for those extra spaces and whatnot. So,
Well, I appreciate that because I have been saved from a lot of embarrassment in my columns when I used to write newspaper columns by a proofreader. A lot of embarrassment. So I appreciate that.
my other question on this same page, the electives and the description of the electives, I find very confusing in that it's, okay, so you've got 6 electives
Yes.
and 2 must be any combination of, okay, I'm not going to read it out loud. And it recommends a 4-course concentration.
So, for instance, it's recommending that maybe you do band 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I understood that part of it. And yet at the bottom of the line, it says, or any other subject area or cross-disciplinary course.
At the bottom.
So I just pretty wordy in there for what it's telling us.
I'm trying to see where that language is. You're on page 40?
I'm on page 40, and it's the part in the box under elective. And it may have been in the previous one that was spoken as well.
Okay. Or any other subject. Okay, I see now. Well, I think that they put that in there to give you some flexibility if, for instance, your school district were offering something very unique, so that you then have to go in and change policy because of that. I see what you're saying.
You know, if it had been left to me, I would have just said electives 6. And you pick out of those other classes, or I might have said 6, a 4-course concentration recommended. But, you know, I'm not sure that with our children who happen to be Renaissance kids who want it all, you know, they take that basic art and they love theater, and then they do debate, and then they also pick up foods because they love to cook. And, you know, they're not getting a concentration anywhere, but they've sure gotten great electives. But
Right.
that's, it's neither here nor there. Obviously, they need 6 electives. So,
Okay, and I have a note here. Why is the CTE post-assessment test being repealed?
That's on page 42.
Yes.
Mr. Levy, I think all that is that they don't call it that anymore. That was a parenthetical statement. And so I think they just don't call it that anymore. So that's why it's struck. The CTE assessments haven't been struck, but previously it was parenthetically called CTE post-assessments. They just don't call it that anymore. So that's why that's removed.
Okay, so we're not getting rid of any assessment tests for CTE?
No, because you'll see
Okay,
high school students must take all end of course tests and career and technical education state assessments required.
okay, all
That
right,
was a parenthetical statement.
all right. That's fine. Okay, did I cut you off, Ms. Carter? Was there anything you were talking about? Okay,
No.
and then I have a question. Why is the date of graduation and program approval being repealed?
Again, we're aligning this policy with the School Boards Association because it defines what we're to do. I suspect that's being struck because there's no longer a 180-day requirement anymore. It's a combination of days and hours. And so I suspect the School Boards Association elected to just get that out of there because there are some school districts that only go to school 170 days. There are some school districts that go to school 185 days. And so,
well, my concern is I want the superintendent. Where was that? Where was that on this thing? That was on page 42.
yes, sir.
Going down to page 42.
Sort of, it's under section C.
Section C, B, C. Yeah.
I think what
Shall
Bob's
be
saying is
approved by the
still has
superintendent.
to approve the graduation rate and the principal.
And the program, the graduation program shall be approved by the principal. Those are two people who I want to approve the programs, and who I want to approve the graduation date. So in other words, I don't want someone going off on their own saying we should have a graduation date here. That seemed, because I understand the superintendent needs to schedule these graduations. Number one, when he can be available, when dignitaries can be available and the like. And I just don't want to take that away from either the superintendent or the principal. That was just my question.
And I can certainly look. I'm going to suspect that's in the law that outlines the responsibilities of principals and superintendents. But I can certainly look into that and check on it.
Yeah, I mean, is there any problem with just leaving that in? Not getting rid of that first sentence, but leaving in the second sentence?
I will find out.
Okay, does anybody on the committee have a problem with that? Does everybody see what I'm talking
No,
about?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's what's done anyway.
No, I
yeah.
want to make sure that in repealing the policy, we're not saying that that's not going to be done anymore. Sometimes when you say, okay, that no longer has to be done, somebody's going to step up and do something different. And
I'm assuming it's probably covered somewhere else, and that's why they are taking this out. But yes.
okay, so why don't we just leave that in there? But get rid of the that within the week following the 180th day, which could be a problem, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Anita could check to see if it's in another policy.
Yeah. Okay, so then moving down, I had any problem with any of this before we get to 5600 C5?
No, I have to say I'm very
No,
glad
dear.
to see the explanations on children of military families. This didn't make any difference 10, 15 years ago because we had so few military children in. But having watched as our numbers have grown, we definitely need to be able to make allowances. And I've seen our counselors be able to do that, to take a class that a child was halfway finished at another school and be able to provide them options to test out of the rest of it and or to apply the first part of it to some other class. And so it's really good to see this laid out.
And I also believe that we have to be known as a military school because people do have other choices in schooling. And the more responsive and friendlier we can be to our people in uniform, the better off we will be. Better off we'll be as a country, actually.
We also have a standalone policy about military children. It's
Right.
policy 6024, in case anybody's interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So going over to sub 5, which is 5600 C5, tell me why that's there to do this biannually and to reduce the time spent in testing.
This is not about testing results, Mr. Levy. This is really about a report on testing, like tests administered, the number of hours spent on tests. There's in 115C 174-12, subsection D1, in each even numbered year, each local board of education shall review all local standardized testing administered to students by the local school administrative unit at the direction of the local board of education for the prior 2 years in order to determine the number of tests administered to students and the number of hours required for students to complete the tests. And then it goes on. So this is not about reporting test results. It's about an analysis and a review of the number of tests being administered. Some of this came about because there have been school districts who required testing above and beyond what the state requires. And in some communities, it was viewed as excessive. So the General Assembly put this requirement in place so that school boards were keeping their eye on the amount of testing that was being required.
So this is simply, you're talking about this is simply a report on the testing. It is not the testing itself.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
Bob, for the past several years, there's been a big concern about the amount of hours kids are spending being tested. I know the State Board of Education has worked on that. So what they're trying to do is maybe cut down on the testing some, not what's being tested, but cut down on what the state's requiring, what the federal government's requiring, still getting the information, but making sure that we don't have duplications and stuff like that. Because when you really look at the hours, particularly elementary school students spend in testing, like 3 hours on one test, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, I understand it, and no one likes what the term is high stakes standardized tests. But unfortunately, it's the only way to get data so that we can find out whether we're doing a good job or not. It's in teachers' terms, it's not called a test. The teachers like to call it an assessment. And that's probably a good word. Because until we get, I just want to make sure that we're not shorting ourselves on data so that we can make a determination. But if you're talking about not testing itself, but a report on the hours of testing, that's fine. But this is not saying that we're only going to test biennially. Am I correct?
Correct.
No.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So, yes, that's important. So any problems? No problems there. The next thing is just references. And my next thing is 6,900. Does anybody have anything before 6,900?
We had-
I do not.
Did we skip 6805? I mean, I don't have anything about it, but yeah.
I was skipping 6805. I didn't have any notes
I don't have any questions
on
either.
it. It's a listing of fees and charges shall be filed with the office of the superintendent and reported to the state superintendent of public instruction. Instead, it says the superintendent shall ensure that schedules, fees, and charges and solicitations approved by the board is published in the school system's website by October 15th of each year. And the schedule is subsequently revised within 30 days following the revision. I don't quite understand, by the way, reading it again.
I don't have any questions.
I don't understand the second part, that last part. And the schedule is
I'm
subsequent.
fine with it.
It's just, Mr. Levy, it really is just to ensure that we're being very transparent and open with parents about what fees may be charged. And
No, I see it. It says if the schedule is subsequently revised within 30 days following its revision. I see that. And that's fine with me. That's the reason why I didn't have any problem with it. It's a good policy because I think that we always have to make sure that we're in tune with the constitutional requirement of a free public education. And that a parent shouldn't be discouraged from sending their child to school or anything because there are fees involved.
And by the way, Mr. Levy, just so that you know, and I'm trying to find it very quickly. We have a policy on fee waivers for.
No, I'm sure that we do.
Yeah.
And I have no problem. I have no problem with that. But and I think this change actually makes it more open and transparent. So I agree with it.
And it really comports with what we've been doing. So that's good.
Okay, here's a question that I have, and I have a problem with some of this. 6,900. So that the public will understand what is here. Let me read it. It did say the Moore County Board of Education affirms the principle of that every student, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, cultural or economic background, or disability, should be given an equal opportunity for sound basic education. And basically, that takes out all of that and simply gets rid of what are, in effect, protected classes. And
Bob, I think that what we're trying to do there, instead of listing them all, look further down, we talk about the ones that are required by state and federal law, all of them that are required by state and federal law, instead of trying to list each one specifically. Is that correct, Anita?
Yes, this policy is written to be intentionally broad because the more specific details are contained in other policies. And this revision removes some language that really applies to employees. And this is a student policy. This is about equal educational opportunities for students, not for employees. So I think what happened is that when the School Boards Association revised, and I mean significant revisions based on the Title IX regulations, they have continued to try to clean up some of the related policies and ensure that they're all aligned. So these protections are not being removed from policy. It's just this particular policy is written to be intentionally broad because the specifics are contained other places.
all right, let me take a very, very close look.
Looks to me like it's becoming so wordy that we're looking for a way to make it a little easier to follow, because basically what we're saying is that every student should be given equal opportunity. And without needing to specify other than to say in accordance with applicable law.
state and federal law. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the programs and services of the school system or otherwise subjected to discrimination under any educational program activity conducted just one moment. So we're simply saying, just one second. Okay, now you got rid of this thing having to do with this is the policy of the Moore County Board of Education that when providing training, compensation, promotion, or other attributes of employment, it shall be done regardless of race, creed, color, etc. Does that appear anywhere else in our policies, and where?
It does. That's related to employment. This policy is a student services policy. So that
Okay, all right. I'm very curious. Where does that appear with regard to employment? Is there a specific provision place where it appears?
Yes, it's actually policy 3010/4010.
3010/4010.
And if it's okay, I'm happy to read it. It's the policy of the Moore County.
If you would, please.
It's the policy of the Moore County Board of Education to provide all applicants for employment with equal employment opportunities and to provide current employees with training, compensation, promotion, and other attributes of employment without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, military affiliation, genetic information, sex, age, or disability, except where sex, age, or physical requirements are essential occupational qualifications. All candidates will be evaluated on their merits and qualifications for positions. The Moore County Board of Education also recognizes the educational and professional advantages of racial, sexual, and cultural diversity in the makeup of the professional staff that is employed to serve the students enrolled in the Moore County Public School System. Therefore, the board is also committed to a recruitment and employment program that will result in a professional staff that reflects the racial, sexual, and cultural diversity of the Moore County community and the students who attend the Moore County Public School System.
All right, and that's been in our policy for a while.
It was last updated in 2014.
Okay, all right. And while I have some small problems with it, I'm not going to ask that anything be done with that at this time. I just want to make sure that we have these protections for race, sex, and the like
Yes.
in our in our policies. And there haven't been any proposals to change that policy, right?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. No.
Okay, all right. So therefore, I'll drop this. So this change simply is to get it out of the student realm.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And again,
All
I think the School Board Association kind of discovered, oh gosh, that doesn't belong in there when they were looking at all of the discrimination, harassment, bullying policies that were affected by the significant Title IX regulation changes last summer and fall.
Right. And as I say, while I have a problem with that policy, which seems to promotes non-discrimination with one hand, and then seems to sort of welcome it to come in with another, I'll probably have to deal with that at another time. Because don't forget, one of my what my background is a law review article which I authored under Bakke. So, at any rate, I don't mean to belabor that. Let's keep on going. So I'll withdraw any objection to that. So anybody have anything before 7403?
No, sir, not here.
Okay, 7403. My note is I do not understand why most of this is which deals with discipline and order is being repealed. So tell me, Ms. Alpenfels, why?
We are aligning, our policy had not been revised for a very long time. And when I got the School Boards Association sample, I noticed how disparate ours was from it. The School Boards Association policy appeared to be much more detailed and was very helpful. I don't know if you saw section D. It really talks about unauthorized, disruptive, or dangerous visitors. And if that's what you're talking about, it appears to be addressed there. You also had a question about probation officers. This language in this policy tracks state law. And I confirmed with Chief Fry that these are standard operating procedures for probation officers. What you don't want to have is we've got a kid in class. We are to offer equal educational opportunities for students. You don't need probation officers just showing up unannounced and yanking a kid out of class. And these guidelines are really designed to keep instruction going and keep instruction from being interrupted for those kinds of reasons. And again, Chief Fry said, "Oh yeah, this is how it rolls," because I did confirm that to make sure this was operationally in alignment with what we do. And I hope that
my concern is actually whether the probation officers have anything to do with what is called juvenile dependency. And juvenile dependency is where we have an abused child. And oftentimes, the only time that an investigator can talk to a child about abuse away from a parent or guardian who may be the abuser is to meet with that child in school. And I wanted to make sure that this wasn't hampering that.
I am not aware that it is. You even see here that there's a provision for a probation officer to meet with a student at school. It's just there are some parameters and a protocol for that to happen.
Okay, and you're telling me that Chief Fry is okay with this?
Oh, yes, I had Chief Fry review it to ensure that what we're doing matches what's here. And he said, and then our attorney also said, yeah, this is how it's written in the law. So this is really sort of a standard procedure. Mr. Dennison, I think you were saying something and you were muted.
Yeah, I don't think it's prohibiting anything, Bob, for them. It's just really saying we don't want them walking into school past the office and everything, running into a classroom to grab a child.
Oh, of course not. Of course, if they did that, I would hope that our principal would talk to Chief Fry, who would talk to the head of the probation office.
I can promise you that would happen. Yes.
Yeah, because we definitely don't want that. But neither do I want to inhibit any investigation. And because when with regard to either juvenile delinquency or especially juvenile dependency, and juvenile dependency is different, and that's our function for protecting children from abuse, and that's important to me.
Absolutely.
It's not because one of the other things is, I guess you're learning a little bit more about me, is I spent 40 years in juvenile dependency court. Was part of my family law background, dealing with abused children, and I want to make sure that we have a clean and open pipeline for investigators into abusive children. So,
yes, absolutely.
Dr. Alpenfels, along those same lines, I remember we would routinely have representatives from DSS
Oh,
come
yeah.
to the schools and have sessions with children, catch-ups with children, whatnot. Is there a separate policy that covers that kind of visit, or is this
There-
maybe the same one?
There absolutely is. Let me find that number.
Because Bob, that's important with what you're saying as well.
Yes, it is.
And I'm assuming they follow the same guidelines. I can remember working in the office from time to time, and someone would check in, and you want to provide them with an appropriate spot to be able to counsel and talk, not to have them walking up in the courtyard at lunchtime and encountering a child in the midst of his friends and
Right,
trying
just like any visitor, we want everyone to accept an emergency, even better be a really good emergency to check in with the office and make sure that that things are done correctly.
So that policy that you're referencing, Ms. Carter, is policy 6730, child abuse and related threats to child safety. There's a policy and regulations that accompany that policy.
That's 6730.
Yes, sir.
Let me just go to that just for a second here.
While he's looking that up, Dr. Appenfels, on page 53,
Yes.
The first line under D,
Yes.
it says if a school employee becomes aware than individual.
That and individual. Yes. Got it. Thank you. That's so, and by the way, I'm not going to highlight changes like that on the minutes because that's not a substantive.
No, it's definitely not.
So, I'm actually very proud that in 97 pages, you've only found those few things.
I had to look long and hard. Yes, put it on my iPad and blowing it up great big so I could see it.
It's helpful. I want it to be right so badly.
I'm really glad to read this last policy, and I know it's not a new policy. We've had similar policies in effect, but I know how many on the high school level now, especially boyfriends or girlfriends like to drop in on the school campus who happen to attend the school, and a lot of this directly prohibits that.
That's right.
As well as a drug dealer who decides to stand on the outskirts of a middle school campus, hoping to lure some child over and allow them to slip out of class and see someone that way. So I'm glad we have the language to back up their removal and to give the school support to make sure that only the necessary people are on campus.
Right.
Okay, so I don't see 6730 in my excerpt, but then again, you didn't photostat the entire manual, so which I appreciate. So I'm going to go ahead. If that policy is there, I trust Ms. Appenfels is steering me correct. She always has, so I have no problem. So keep on going here. Actually, that was the end of my notes, or am I totally incorrect here?
You are correct, sir. We have complaints, but that's all really just cleaning up some of the references to other policies. So,
were there any other? Okay, now let's go ahead on my policy that I wanted introduced. So let's have some real discussion. What page was that on?
That's actually on page 56.
It's on page 56. So let's have some real disagreement here. Yeah, this is my proposed policy on free speech. So tell me, Ms. Appenfels, why is our attorney cautioning us on this? By the way, so the public understands, I really want to I don't want to read I could read the whole thing. It is the policy of the Moore County Board of Education that professional instruction in social studies, including but not limited to history, geography, civics, is an essential, and economics, and is an essential part of a meaningful education. It is also well understood that indoctrination of students in favor of any political philosophy runs contrary to the notion of professional instruction. Therefore, when teaching a course which is part of the school curriculum, this board discourages both teachers and administrators from seeking to persuade students to adopt one particular point of view as to those matters to which differing points of view are appropriate. It is not the role of a teacher to promote a preferred point of view within political discourse. Rather, it is the role of the teacher to welcome into class discussions, exercises, and instruction consistent with needed decorum, all policies, all points of view to which a reasonable person might subscribe. Additionally, and within the bounds of reason and necessary classroom decorum, teachers shall allow students to engage in the fullest possible discussions of all aspects of issues which are grade level appropriate and open for class discussion or participation. No student should either be penalized or held to up to ridicule, embarrassment, based upon a political belief which runs contrary to the belief of a teacher, administrator, classmate, or classmates. It is expected that classes will be supervised with the notions of both intellectual freedom and tolerance among all who engage in political discourse. In addition, and I don't want to read, it is further the policy of the Moore County Board of Education to promote the right of every student within the bounds of reason and necessary classroom decorum to exercise rights guaranteed in the North Carolina Constitution, including but not limited to the recognition that, quote, freedom of speech and of the press are the two great bulwarks of liberty and therefore shall never be restrained, but every person shall be held responsible for their abuse. That's a quote from the North Carolina Constitution, Article 1, Section 14. Further, the board, through its administrators, shall make available, and each social studies classroom shall display the above stated excerpt from the Constitution of the state of North Carolina, such that all students read it and consider its import. I'm sorry that I had to do that, but probably there are some people who are listening in on this who are wondering what Mr. Levy is doing. So tell me why this is a bad idea.
I don't have an opinion that it's a bad idea. I can give you just some overall context. By the way, your agenda is posted on the web so that anybody can see this agenda. It was posted 2 days ago. So I hope that anyone listening in knows that that's available for review.
Yes.
There are a number of questions. We want to figure out where would this fit in the broader array of policies. We do have some language in some other policies, and I'll try to go through those relatively quickly, but if I go too quickly, please let me know. So policy 3060, discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law. By the way, this policy is in 3 different sections. It has the following language. This policy will not be construed to allow school officials to punish student expression or speech based on undifferentiated fear or apprehension of a disturbance or out of a desire to avoid the discomfort and unpleasantness that may accompany an unpopular viewpoint. So that's already in our discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law policy. In our Title IX sexual harassment grievance policy, we have similar language. This policy will not be construed to allow school officials to punish student expression or speech based on undifferentiated fear or apprehension of a disturbance or out of a desire to avoid the discomfort and unpleasantness that may accompany an unpopular viewpoint. We have policy 5020, academic freedom. Teachers shall be protected from censorship or restraint, which unreasonably interferes with their obligation to expose students to controversial issues and to help students express their own views on such issues. Controversial issues arising from classroom situations and subject matter may be discussed and explored in classrooms. Care shall be taken not to inhibit the dignity, the personality, or the intellectuality of either the teacher or the students. Freedom to learn requires that students be given an opportunity to develop an understanding of ideas and people who may seem alien to them, and that they develop a capacity to discern the differences between fact and opinion and to weigh arguments, slogans, and appeals. We have policy 5021.
What was that last number?
That last one is 5020.
What was that last policy number? 5020.
5020. We have a policy on controversial speakers, 5021, and I won't read this one unless you think that would be helpful. Would that be helpful, Mr. Levy?
Go ahead. You can abbreviate it. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the board recognizes that visiting speakers may be of specific persuasions and that their topics may be controversial. If they are prohibited from speaking because of their points of view, academic freedom is endangered. Students need to study issues upon which there is disagreement and to practice analyzing problems, gathering and organizing facts, discriminating between facts and opinions, discussing differing viewpoints, and drawing tentative conclusions. So you get the sense of that policy. We do have a policy 5023 on citizenship and character education. It talks about we are to display the North Carolina and United States flags. We are to commemorate Constitution Day and Citizenship Day and Memorial Day. If students are in attendance, we shall have an educational program about the United States Constitution and Memorial Day and so forth. That's policy 5023. And again, I don't know that those references to other policies are helpful, but it's just to note that rather than pulling out a single content area, because frankly, the concern that you expressed could take place in any content area. Because I think back to my experience as a music teacher. If I'm doing my job and we're understanding the text that we're singing, we may find ourselves in these conversations. I'm sure Ms. Carter has many examples from her work as a debate teacher, and you may want to speak to that, Ms. Carter. I don't know.
Well, I can add to that. Everything that is in this in the new proposal from Mr. Levy, I 100% agree with, because that was just so basic to my instructional time within debate. My goal was always never to impart my own opinion. I was there to facilitate young people developing their own opinions and being encouraged to explore both sides to any issue, or multiple sides to issues, not just both sides. What I'd like to see us do, because I think this is, is very worthwhile, but I'm with you. It kind of doesn't need to be restricted just to a social studies platform. I'm thinking about music, and when you sing "This Is My Country" or oh my goodness, what was the old Arlo Guthrie one? "This land is your land. This land is my." Those kind of things. We're sort of opening the door to that kind of discussion. Even in other classes, the child in an art class who gets a photography assignment to take pictures of the American dream, or the, what do the American people actually look like? You would not want to have them restricted in any way from exploring all aspects of it. I would like if you would be willing to supply them let me have all the references you've just gone back through, such that I could take the time to actually really read all those other references. And Bob, you might like that as well.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
How to pull it together. It may be that we need something that truly just addresses free speech. But it may be that we can begin with what we already have, and then come back to it, to pull it all together, such that those references to other policies could be included in one if we decide we need to create a new one. Like I said, I think Bob's points are well made. In today's world, we definitely need to be more accepting of those who believe differently from ourselves. And we need to make students, our children, feel comfortable in being different, in feeling differently, in being open to stating and supporting their differences. And I think that's behind Bob's policy here, such that as educators, we remember we're there to facilitate, not to force a child to believe in a particular way.
One of the problems, and the reason why I bring this up, is that I have been the recipient of many anecdotal instances, one of which involved, and it doesn't matter who it is or what teacher it is, of a Zoom call in which a student is wearing a Make America Great hat. And the teacher says on the call, says, "Take it off." And the student then says, it's a pretty interesting statement, says, "Are you a Biden supporter?" And says that to the teacher, and the teacher says, "Yes." And then the student says, "Well, then I'll keep it on." The bottom line is, and I've gotten many anecdotal reports, is that some of our teachers, not a lot, I think almost all of our teachers, in fact, almost, are great at this, but some of them want to push a particular agenda and a particular political agenda. And it is our job, part of this is to give a message to especially our social studies teachers, that shaming a child based on a political belief, and it used to be that those political beliefs that used to be shamed when I was in school were liberal beliefs. Today, oftentimes those beliefs are conservative beliefs, which are being shamed in school. And I don't care whether it's liberal or conservative. I believe in critical thinking, and that's and that students need to be exposed to just about everything. And it's the job of a teacher to set appropriate boundaries, but to engender intellectual discourse without shaming. And so that's the reason why I want it. And I want a separate, I would like to see a separate policy on that. Ms. Carter, are you saying that you could get together with me and get a policy which is more acceptable or something like that?
Oh, I think that we need to, before we go any farther with what you've got, because what you've given us is a great launch pad on this, we should go back and look at these other policies that Dr. Appenfield's mentioned already and see whether we need to revise what you're recommending, whether we can adapt from policies already there. It may be that we need to hook on to a policy that's there already. But yes, I would like to work with you to see what direction we need to go with this. I 100% agree. I don't want to ever see a child afraid to participate in civil discourse just because they think differently from a teacher or from another child within the classroom. That is just fundamental to everything we stand for. So we want to definitely make that happen for them. We want to support them with it. So what we want to do, rather than loading our policy book up with a potentially unnecessary one, we need to evaluate what we've got, see if it's on target, and then see how to make best use of what you're recommending.
Okay, let me tell you what my position is. My position is I want a policy on free speech, and it may be just pulling all these policies down to put them in one place. I don't know, because some of those policies sounded actually very good to me. Okay, but I want to be able to send a message to our students and our teachers that learning is important, indoctrination is discouraged. And by the way, I didn't say anybody gets fired or anything like that. What I said is we discourage it. We discourage indoctrination. We encourage critical thinking. So what I'd like to do is table this to our next meeting. In the meantime, maybe Ms. Carter, you and I can work on it. At the same time, I want to send this to our in our work session. I want to distribute this to our other board members so that maybe they can have some input and make it clear to the public what we're working on.
I think definitely we need to, evaluate what's out there and possibly pull together what we've already got. Interesting, anecdotally, I can remember a teacher who happened to teach next door to me for a while back when John Edwards was running for president, and she was a very, very vocal supporter of Edwards. The posters in her classroom, and it became very quickly that they were not appropriately displayed. And so she was asked to remove, unless she wanted to provide posters for both sides of the equation there. I don't remember who all was still in the running at that point, but she was asked to remove the ones that, unless she could provide them both sides of it, then she shouldn't be just supporting one. And, so I know that we do have people who are looking at the directions we give our children and what we do with them. So like I said, I don't want to load us down with another policy. I'm guessing Dr. Apple.
Okay, I can't hear you. There's a lot of feedback there.
Yeah, someone has joined us who's not muted, and that may be what is causing the sound difficulty. I'm not sure.
That may be me, Anita. Yeah, I lost my internet connection, so I'm on the phone.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is this better?
Can you mute your phone? Are you on your cell phone?
No, I'm on my other, but I can still mute it. Let me see what happens.
Okay. Just to cut the feedback.
Yeah. It probably won't show as muted since he's on his phone, but I think the sound is better at the moment, so proceed.
Gosh, I'm not sure I can remember what I was going to say, but
I'm sorry.
Anyway, Bob, I think that if we proceed with this, obviously this is not a bit of the policy that we're wanting to get out and get onto board approval right away, because I know what I was going to say. It would be interesting to see, and Dr. Appenfeld, I'm sure, can find out through Jason, the attorney who oversees this, if other school boards already have in effect a policy just specifically on free speech, and if so, how is it worded? It would be worth looking into to see if that's something we would want to incorporate as well. So,
and I've actually already done that, and I could not find one. By the way, there's also a policy. You have a policy it's a personnel policy on political activities, and I'll include that in the ones that I'm going to send you to review. But it also mentions the importance of neutrality, Mr. Levy, in the classroom. So that may be helpful, and I didn't mean to leave that one out. Mr. Weber, when he and I talked about this, what you want to also be careful about, students do not have the same free speech rights as adults. And so we want to be careful about not portraying that they have rights that they really don't, because that can be problematic in terms of addressing behavior if we're not careful. So again, that's why
I not only do I understand that, but as first of all, I want to make sure that students know that they have the rights under, you and I talked, Ms. Appenfeld, under Tinker, so that the public understands that is the armband case where students who were against the war in Vietnam at the time wanted to wear armbands to school, black armbands, significant during what was called Moratorium Day, announce their objection to the war, and they were allowed to do that. While I understand they don't have the same rights as adults, that's the reason why I put in the proposed policy subject to the needs of decorum. And I believe those are the words of the Tinker case, that we do have needs for a certain amount of decorum. But all that being said, I want to telegraph to our teachers and the like, especially some of whom have not been as good a teacher as, say, Ms. Carter was in the last election. That well, the way I used to present it to students was that you don't need to know how I feel, and I don't really care whether you feel you want to be on this side of the issue or that side of the issue. I'm concerned whether you have evidence and logical arguments for your position that you're taking. And that is critical thinking, and that is important. But so what I'll do is I'll present this as something we're working on to the board when I present. I assume I'm presenting our recommendations to the board, Ms. Carter?
Yes, you would be the one to present, and Dr. Appenfeld will be there to back you up with any explanations. Now, Dr. Appenfeld, this is on the March agenda. This particular bunch of policies on the March agenda, correct?
Correct. The February agenda was so full, and the timing makes it almost impossible to, that agenda has already had to be completed. So yes, so we've got, I'll have some time to do the follow-ups that we need and get this in place. And so that would be the appropriate time, I think, Mr. Levy, is when we present whatever you all determine for first reading at the March work session. Your policies require 2 readings. We typically do first reading at the work session and then approval on second reading at the board meeting. That gives everybody time to review and to provide any feedback. And that is,
and maybe Ms. Carter, between now and that March session, you and I can get together, and of course Mr. Dennison's invited as well, to bring those policies together, and maybe we can create something and have an additional very, very short meeting before that March session.
I think that'd be great. Let's see if Dr. Appenfeld will supply us with the list of other policies that pertain to some of the similar language with this. And, I think it would be appropriate too, Mr. Levy, we can go ahead and share with the rest of the board that we are looking at a potential policy on freedom of speech. And
I think that's a good idea. That's what I want to telegraph that to the rest of the board, and I want to telegraph that to the public, because time and time again, I am getting the public sometimes perceiving correctly, sometimes perceiving absolutely incorrectly about whether indoctrination goes on as opposed to learning.
I've heard some of those similar comments, and there's so much going on. I can't imagine time in the day to really try and indoctrinate anybody in any way. But perhaps in your board comments, mention that you could mention that this is something of great interest to you, and that you are facilitating the policy committee to look at school policies on freedom of speech, and to see if the development of another policy would be helpful.
Yes,
and that way you could get some feedback. So why don't you talk about that briefly in part of your board comments?
Okay. I want to talk about that as I present. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Dennison.
Yeah.
Ed, hold on.
I missed.
Go ahead.
Oh, hold it, Ed. Why don't you let Libby finish, and then I'll go to you. Yeah, can you hear me?
What I was thinking was that if you go ahead and mention it in your board comments here in one of the 2 February meetings coming up, you could begin to maybe get some feedback.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
so that we don't put it off until you mention it in March, and then that puts us off another month. You could go ahead and mention it either Monday or the next Monday in one of your board comments.
And Mr. Dennison had something to say.
Yeah, a couple of comments. One is, Anita, maybe you can check to see if on the teacher evaluation forms, this subject is on there as part of the evaluation. I don't know what's on those forms now, but that's one way we could keep a tab, keep track of what's really happening in the classroom. And the other thing too that I wanted to say, years ago, the teacher was the fountain of all knowledge. It's completely changed today. The teacher's responsibility now is, and they ask questions of the students and guide them for the students to come up with the answer themselves that the teacher would have given them had they known. So, I think we're really encouraging it a lot in the schools. But I think making sure it's on the evaluation too, and that the principals are watching to make sure that nothing shouldn't be happening is not happening. And that's the only comment I had.
And I agree with that. Let me echo what Mr. Dennison said. Very, 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 very good idea. Is there anything else before I have one question? And that question is, our board meeting on Monday, I thought for some reason it started at 8:30 in the morning. That maybe that, but then I looked and I saw it showed 3 o'clock in the afternoon as usual. What is the situation?
Ooh, something's not right. I thought it was at 9 a.m. on Monday.
Well, whatever, 8:30 or 9 is not my thing, but I looked at our website, right, and it still had the 3 p.m. start date. Maybe Ms. Appenfels is looking at it now. Tell me, am I right or wrong?
I think that'll change when they come out with the agenda tomorrow.
Yeah, but if Ms. Appenfels or Mr. Eklund, if Mr. Eklund is listening, if he can change that immediately, I think that's important.
I'll take care of that, Mr. Levy. You're correct. It does still show 3 o'clock. I'll take care of that as soon as we conclude.
And that is totally virtual. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Before we sign off here, a question for Dr. Appenfels to go back to creating a new policy. What is the process to create a policy from scratch? I mean, I understand as we revise, that's easy, but what's the policy? What is the policy on policies?
Well, we have rarely, we have so many policies, we have rarely needed to devise one from scratch. And we are following what your policy says we'll do. We are involving council, which is why I got some feedback from council before this meeting, simply to save time. And so we would, your committee would work to draft the language. We would run it through our attorney and get that attorney's feedback to ensure that what you're doing is legal and within the bounds of what board policy should be. And we'll just take it from there. I don't have a lot of experience because, again, there are so many policies that have language we typically amend. Sometimes there'll be a new policy, but it typically comes out from the School Boards Association as a result of state or federal law. Because what you don't want to have and I'm not saying this is true with this one, what you don't want in policy is policies that you don't need. You want enough policy to provide the security of the boundaries that are necessary, but you don't want them to be so prescriptive. When I do training on laws and policies for substitutes and employees, we're very clear to say, look, policy cannot address every situation that you're going to face. Sometimes you have to apply policy to episodes that are not explicitly described. And so, and again, we'll figure out what to do here. But it will be good for y'all to be able to take some time and look at these others and just see where that leads you.
I appreciate your hard work. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
Could this possibly be an area where there might be a regulation, since what we have is a lot of different policies, some sort of regulation from the superintendent.
We could, and we could find where does that belong? Now, regulations are not typically approved by the board. You know, those need to be malleable. So regulations are typically administrative regulations.
Right, but they're there for that specific policy.
That's right.
So
And
the regulations have to follow policy. Some of the, administrative things, which may not be included in policy, but
right.
The regulation has to be about the policy.
A good example is the child abuse policy we talked about earlier. There's a child abuse policy, and then there are child abuse policy regulations that actually explain how it's going to work.
Right.
The board doesn't approve, but that are tied to that policy.
And common sense it does a lot to help policy, doesn't it, Ms. Appenfels?
It does, except I just find sometimes common sense is not common sometimes. But
I've heard that. I've heard that phrase before.
Well, it's through it's whatever glasses you're looking through, and everybody's glasses are different. So
okay, so Ms. Appenfels, if you can get those minor changes that we've made, I'd appreciate that. I assume Ms. Carter and Mr. Dennison approves the changes that we've approved, which have been fairly minor.
Yes.
And what we would typically do, Mr. Levy, is you would entertain a motion to approve the policies as presented. By the way, we didn't go through the legal changes that are in the remainder of this agenda, but I am assuming that you all agree those are cursory and just need to be done. But typically we would entertain a motion in a second, and we would vote for these policies to be presented on first reading at the March, let me get the date, at the March 1st work session, and we would.
But that is as amended, because I think there were a couple of small amendments that Ms. Carter had, and I think Mr. Dennison had. I think I had. But you have those down, right?
Right, and what I'll do is I'll run those through the attorney filter one more time. Mr. Levy, I'll probably send minutes to you for your review, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Okay. Second, Ms. Carter.
Second.
Okay, so we're moving to approve to recommend to the board the policy changes as amended by the suggestions made by Ms. Carter, Mr. Dennison, and myself, which were agreed upon, not the ones which we talked about, but and had some discussion on, but which were agreed upon, and which Ms. Appenfels wrote down.
Yeah.
So with that, hearing no, I assume there's no discussion on it. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, hearing crickets. It's approved 3-0. So that does it. Is there anything else?
Chair, I recommend or make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
That.
Well, let me see. I don't have any reason to do that. Besides, I'd be outvoted 2-1, right? So I'll agree with that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much,
One and all.
everyone, for doing this.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Appenfels.
especially Ms. Appenfels. Right.